every time I start a session or I start a conversation, particularly around topics that I feel will be difficult, I tell myself, as well as I may even start the conversation with the other individual to say, in this conversation, can we assume positive intent? Hello, and thank you for joining us as we talk about one of the most important things when we think about progress and journey on the diversity, equity, and inclusion journey, and that is around courageous conversation. It used to be called, how do I have a difficult conversation? And obviously, no one wants to have a difficult conversation. And so we have started to use the words courageous conversations. But let's be really honest, work of any kind requires communication. And yes, there may be a need to broach difficult subjects. It's one of those things, right? When people say we don't talk about money, we don't talk about politics, but they're all things that actually in the workplace, I think we know we kind of do talk about, whether we mean to or whether it's just becoming what we do. As I say, work is in our homes now. We're probably doing more work in our homes than ever before, right? Due to the hybrid and remote environment. So there is no standard buckets and set things that, oh, I only talk about this at home because probably while I'm working, the TV is on in the background, or my phone is going to pop off and it's the latest in what's happening in the world. And so immediately, maybe even on a call or maybe in a quick instant message with someone, I'm going to go, did you just see that? Right. And so without knowing it, it may be a difficult subject that I've happened. And we really want to understand that, you know, we need to have a conversation. It's almost a lost art, as we say, in our current environment. So, your challenge is, how do I create an open and productive conversation? How can these discussions be places where we can talk about it, where people feel safe sharing their experience and perspectives, as well as create an environment where we're learning? So there are some fundamental ground rules, I believe, for all conversations, whether they're with colleagues, in a team, or even in a larger group setting. And so that's what we're going to explore in the next times that we have together. So, very importantly, the first thing I just want you to know is what? A conversation is a dialogue, not a monologue. Now, I'm giving a monologue, right? You have to listen to me. I'm giving a lecture, I'm giving something that you're learning, but we're talking about a true conversation. So, if you or a colleague are the only person talking, that lets you know right there it's not a conversation. So, we really want to establish some ground rules for these conversations. Now, what I just said, we're not talking about some random, I was instant messaging you and now we're having this deep, you know, huge conversation. I want you to actually set these conversations up. Try to do them again when kind of emotions are not at a high. You could actually just immediately say, let's actually schedule time to talk about this. Okay. So that again, you create an environment where we have an understanding of what's going to happen. So let's talk about some of these ground rules that I want you to do. So every time I start a session or I start a conversation, particularly around topics that I feel will be difficult, I tell myself, as well as I may even start the conversation with the other individual to say, in this conversation, can we assume positive intent? And they may look at me and say to them, and same as I say in my sessions, I'm going to assume that as we approach this topic, that there's nothing but positive intent. That what you may say, whether it comes out right or wrong, I believe you have positive intentions. That's literally how I'm going to start the conversation. And I'm going to ask them, do they believe the same of me? That we're both entering this conversation with the intention to, as I said, learn more and be able to share our experiences and perspectives with each other. Notice I didn't say change their experience or perception, to understand and listen to their experience and perceptions. So again, I'm going to assume positive intent. I personally, I'm going to tell myself and be clear as I enter the conversation that I want to be open, I want to be transparent. And ultimately, if I do make a mistake, even in this conversation, that I am going to admit it. I'm going to admit those mistakes. And we'll talk about that a little later. I'm going to embrace the power of humble listening, empathetic listening, right? Stephen Covey says part of our problem basically is we're listening for the chance to respond. That's not reflective, empathic, and humble listening. I'm not trying to listen to get my next point, right? I'm listening with true intentions that I want to maybe even not have a response and just say thank you for sharing. So empathetic, humble listening, not I'm ready to respond immediately. And then saying we're going to create an actual safe space. So again, whether that is in a Zoom or online, we're going to make sure that we understand that it's just you and me. This conversation may not go outside of this room unless there is some action that we must take. Or I'm going to invite you to maybe a neutral space. Let's actually meet in person if opportunity exists. May call, again, into an office space, but there is going to actually be a creation of a safe space where, again, I'm not sitting by behind the desk looking at you. I may actually come from around the desk and actually we have seats that are facing each other. If it's more than one person, possibly a circle, be conscious about actually creating the space so that it creates safety and trust. So, how do we start? We're going to always look to, in the conversation, ask questions. So we've started with, we're assuming positive intent. We've set these ground rules. I've actually set the room up how I want to. And in my mind, I'm not, again, here to defend. I'm here that I want to listen. I want to understand their experience, their perception, their perspective, possibly to something that was said or happened. So, how do I listen? How do I learn from others? I have to ask questions. So, even if it's a response of something that was said to me, I may say, can you explain what you meant when you said to me in the meeting that, I was articulate and that all African American dot, 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 or that all women dot, 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 or that you believe my performance and feedback was inappropriate, whatever it is, can you explain? And again, some people go, "Oh, that sounds sarcastic." It's all around, to me, your tone. And again, the setup of the room. So you literally, I truly want to know and understand your perspective. Can you explain what you meant when you said, right? And continue to ask questions. Not get ready again. Remember, not listening to defend, but to ask questions, to truly try to understand their perspective. And then possibly after you've gotten their true explanation of what they meant and what they said, you may want to offer a suggestion. But let's make sure it's a thoughtful suggestion, not a blame suggestion. So you may say, I don't know, but I believe maybe a more inclusive way to say that would have been. Or let me explain what happened when you said that to me and how next time could say it differently. Again, thoughtful suggestions that actually, again, show some difference in action. You may then want to share your vulnerability. Again, sharing, I've been there before. It's okay. When that happened to me or something similar happened to me, I've shared this. I did this. So again, you're sharing that not everybody in this journey is perfect, right? A lot of people in the diversity, equity, inclusion space, I tell people all the time, I guess I'm an expert, right? So I should always get it right. I don't. I still sometimes use exclusive language. I still say, you guys, or I say things that are sayings that probably aren't good sayings to say, that I don't really know where their background comes from. Right. I just read something that just now from someone that was talking about the peanut gallery. And I think, again, in our inclusive leadership session, language session, excuse me, we talked about that. Right. But I can say, I've done that. And this is what I did to correct it. So share your vulnerability. And then lastly, you're going to, you're going to recognize, even in the midst of that conversation, if you feel a little uncomfortable, you're on the right track. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Being an ally, and we have a session on ally, so make sure you see that. Being an active ally will create discomfort. And so as you have these conversations, no, they're not going to all go perfectly, but you're going to be okay with being uncomfortable. And you may even call it out. Ooh, this conversation is really making me feel a little uncomfortable, but I'm leaning in because I really want to develop this relationship with you, or I really want to understand your perspective or your experience. Call it out and do so. So you're going to use questions, offer thoughtful suggestions, share your vulnerability, and get comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, you may say, Florence, that sounds all great. Woo, yay. But what if there's hostility, right? What if it's the sharing and something wasn't perceived as right? Remember what I said. At that point, you may want to call out. This is not a productive conversation for us right now. I really wanted to discuss this with you. Maybe we can continue this conversation at a later time when we've all had a moment to breathe, right? Go back to your organizational mission, vision, and values, right? The organization I work with, we have these 5 C's, and one of them is caring. And so I may lean in and say, this conversation right now is not exhibiting our 5 C's of caring and curiosity. So maybe we'll continue this a later time. I felt it was important to discuss this with you. Thank you for your time, but possibly let's do it a different time when we all can come back with a different moment of how we feel. It's okay to, again, cut the conversation, as well as to understand it may take more than one conversation, right? So we may say, who, even in that, this conversation may have been great. Can we continue this conversation later so that we can continue to understand? Okay. Again, our goal is to ask caring, genuine questions, but also set the conversation up for productivity. Now, you may say, what do I do if I mess up? And guess what? You will. Every time you have one of these conversations, as I said, they may not go as planned. You've done all the setup, you're asking questions, even things may be stirring within you that produces some level of unproductivity. But the key is, just like I said before, you're going to share your vulnerability. You're going to share that you made a mistake. Even if in the conversation, the person says to you, again, well, you said this and it made me feel this. Now, again, I've had people go, well, that's not my fault. I don't understand, right? Why do I have to? All of that. It's not your goal. I leave, and I say this all the time when I lead with people: intent versus impact. Intent versus impact. You absolutely may not have meant what happened in the meeting to happen, that you talked over them, that you said one of these microaggressions, right? Oh, in terms of language or what they look like, or, right? You may not, whatever it was, you may not have intended that at all. But it is not your goal to, again, tell someone that what they felt was bad to them wasn't bad to them. It's their perception, it's their reality. So your job is to say, that was not my intentions, but I am sorry for the impact that it's had. There's a story that I tell, right? That there's absolutely times when individuals have, said things to me that I didn't think was appropriate. And again, it could have been because, unfortunately, with microaggressions, as we call them, that you're just the 90th person that said it to me, right? You're the 90th person that says, oh my gosh, you're so articulate. Now you may go, I just really mean you're articulate. But let's say in the African American community, that may spur that, because growing up, it was some perception that I shouldn't, make complete sentences, or that I could not talk in a way that did not sound proper, right? All of that. You don't have no history of knowing that everything that growing up for me, those are the things that triggered me. So when you said that to me after a session, you're just thinking you're just like giving me compliments. But for someone of my background, based upon my experiences and my perception, it literally is, as we say, death by a million cuts. Here we go again. Someone that assumed what? That I couldn't be articulate. Again, it's not for you to explain. That's not what I meant. You have to again lean into, oh my gosh, the impact. Now, someone may say, oh, you're just being sensitive. Again, it's not for you to explain away what's happening to me and how it impacts me. But you can again say, I'm sorry for using that sentence. In the future, I will attempt to, right, tailor it, make sure it's for your comfort level. Make the apology about you and not again on that person. Okay? You're going to make mistakes. It's perfectly fine, but it's how you handle those mistakes. Again, intent versus impact. So as you have these conversations, you're going to what? Again, assume positive intent. You're going to make sure that you set that up. We're going to say that out loud. We're going to put aside our own judgments, viewpoints, and biases. We're going to pay attention to our nonverbal clues. And we're going to ask whether they're being understood and whether you're understanding correctly. You're engaging in dialogue, not a debate. You're going to be open and transparent. Pause for those self-reflection moments. Embrace the humble listening, right? Embrace that. Not always ready to answer. Put your own ego and assumptions and viewpoints aside so that you can listen. And you're going to actually create those safe spaces. Admit that this is not going to be, easy. We're going to get, as I said, comfortable being uncomfortable. We're going to set the room up accordingly. And we're going to commit to having these conversations that matter. We're going to commit to that. And when we do, we're going to do them then by using questions, right? Use questions, offer thoughtful suggestions, share your vulnerability, and truly, again, be comfortable being uncomfortable. And when, not if, you make a mistake, you're going to remember intent versus impact. And therefore, tailor your response that I'm sorry for, and in the future I will, and make that apology about you and not the emotional energy on them that you're apologizing to. If we continue to engage in these types of conversations, again, difficult, courageous conversations with those that we work with, our workplaces will again continue to be places that are inclusive. We're not looking for all the right answers. We're not looking to solve the world's problems. But what a conversation does allow is a dialogue so that we can better understand the perspectives and the experiences that individuals frame and bring into the workplace. And therefore, we will agree, sometimes to disagree, but it will be a place where people feel safe having those types of conversations. Engage in the conversation. Put yourself out there. Intent versus impact. And when you can do that, you will again create inclusive workplaces for all.